Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Invin. Today I wanted to bring you guys some new world early game improvements that you need to know, and these are going to be really important things that you can optimize during your early to mid game stages, and some of them even spill into the late game as well because they're consistent throughout the entire course of the game, and they're going to be things that are going to help you in terms of progression, how you can actually get some nifty little extra storage early on in terms of the bags, which I'm going to cover, how to optimize your character to be the best it can be right from the start so that you can get through some of the early game content that can be more challenging at lower levels, and really just get ahead of the competition with all of these tips. So I'm going to jump straight into it here with the first one, and this is going to be to do with bags. Now with bags, you're going to need a minor rune of holding, and these are available from your faction vendor. Now I'm aware that you do get one bag from doing the quest, and this bag does give you plus 50 encumbrance, but what you can actually do once you get into the main town, whether it's Everfall, Windswood, wherever you are, you can go to your faction vendor, so whichever faction you've picked, the relevant vendor, you can go over there and trade with them for 1,000 faction points, and they are going to give you something called a minor rune of holding. Now this will mean that you can craft a bag that's got at least 100 encumbrance, so it's double as good as the one that you do get from the starting quest, which is going to be really useful. You can get this pretty early on because you only need to do around 4 or 5 faction missions to actually gain 1,000 points at the moment. Obviously those values could change when we go into open beta and full release, but roughly it's going to be fairly cheap in terms of the grand comparison of everything else, and you're going to be able to get a decent amount of holding out of this extra, which is going to save you coming back to town quite as often, particularly when you're gathering, trying to level up those gathering, refining and crafting skills early on in the game. Now also this bag can give you a perk, which is really nice, so you can either get a random roll perk from this, or you can indeed put on a crafting resource ingredient, whichever one you've got. If you've got a perk that you would like to put on, go ahead and throw that in. That can give you a specific thing, or like I said there, you can get a random one, and these can be anything like mining items way less when they're in the bag, or skinning items way less, or whatever the case may be. And like I said there, you get plus 100 encumbrance, or you can get even more than that depending on how lucky you get on the roll, but you can get anywhere from that to around 110 with just this one bag. So what you'll need to do is you'll need 45 coarse leather, which is refined raw hides, 25 linen, which is refined hemp, and 10 iron ingots, which is refined iron ore. Then that together with the minor rune of holding, go over to the outfitting station, scroll down to the bag section, and you'll be able to craft this bag. And it's a really good thing that can give you a huge advantage in terms of storage early game, so that you're not having to return to town quite as often, and when you do return to town, you've got a bigger yield from all of the activities that you've been doing, which is really nice. Now, moving on to the second one here, this is going to be to do with optimizing your armor, and this is a really important point. Now, a lot of you guys have been telling me in the comments, so thanks for the heads up on this one, that the values on the kind of the thresholds for being in light, medium, and heavy are probably going to change into open beta and full launch release, which I would expect to be the case anyway, because it was a little bit ridiculous in the actual closed beta when we were able to get 4 pieces of heavy on and 1 medium, or 4 pieces of medium and 1 light, and still be in the lower category. So I think these values are likely to change, but what's not likely to change is the ability to at least mix and match some of the armor pieces. You might not be able to quite do 4, but I would expect 1 or 2 pieces to be able to be from a different set and still allow you to have the bonuses from the light armor set, for example. So the main thing here is going to be maximizing this out. Like I said, if you are planning to go for the light class, you want to put on as many pieces of medium or maybe a piece of heavy that will still keep you under that 30 weight threshold. Again, that could change for full release, so if it does, I'll bring you guys a video, but for now let's go off the closed beta values, which was 30. So 0 to 30 you'd be in light, so you want to go all the way up to 29.9 with that, and you will still be in the light category. Even if you're right touching the edge of that point, as long as you don't go into the 30, you're still in the light category there. And so you're going to want to make sure you make the most of this in open beta and release, regardless of whether they've changed the values. Just accumulate for that, so maybe you're only putting on 1 or 2 medium pieces, like I said there, as opposed to the 4, and that's going to give you a lot more resistances, particularly if you manage to be able to get a chest plate out of that. I don't know how they're going to rework it, so keep your eye on it, but definitely make sure you optimize your armor to get the most resistances while being in the desired weight category still as well. Now, another really important point is actually going to be to plan ahead with your choice of weapons, and it sounds fairly obvious, but there's a good reason for this, and there's several good reasons for this, to be honest. And the main thing is actually going to be that obviously you level up your weapon the more kills and damage that you do with this base weapon, whether it be PvE or PvP. Both of these will level up your weapon the more damage and kills that you get with it. And whilst you probably change weapons throughout your whole time in Eternum, the first few levels and the first weapons you select and try and use, you should try and get up to the max level, because it's going to give you a huge power spike when you get access to all of those active powers and also the passive powers on the tree, skill trees for these weapons, which are going to be super useful going into PvE or PvP fights. And not to mention the fact that you can then fine-tune your attribute points to reflect the weapons that you're using for it. So if you've got 2 strength scaling weapons, you're going into strength. If you've got 2 dexterity scaling weapons, dexterity, and so on. And this is going to make your early game much more efficient and make you very strong early game and mid game, and of course late game as well if you manage to focus down on some of these weapons. So make sure you scale your attribute points correctly to base off of these, and make sure that you stick with some weapons early doors. Try and make a few builds or whatever, or maybe theory craft some ideas before you get into the game, or use the open beta as a trial period, because it's going to be really important to make sure you can get those passives and active skills really early on. Now, another thing here is going to be to make sure that you don't solely focus on leveling. Whilst getting to max level is, of course, desirable. Everybody wants to get the first to be there. Okay, that's really cool and it's really good, except from talking about overall progression. If you are simply power leveling, then more power to you. Go for those power levels. Do your town board quests or whatever the equivalent will come to be in the open beta that gets you the most XP. But in general, you want to focus on leveling up quickly, of course, because you want to be ahead of the competition. But from an end game perspective, you want to make sure that you've done most of the main story quests, if not all of them, up until level 60, as well as a lot of the side quests as well. The reason for this is sort of threefold, to be honest. One is obviously going into the lore. You're going to understand a lot more about the game, and there's a lot of exciting things coming up within the lore that I've managed to read into whilst looking into the lore pages from the closed beta. Lots of exciting things and hints to future content as well, so if you guys pay attention to the story, you'll see some of the zones that we might be getting in the future, little references to some boss fights that might be coming up, whether they're going to be part of expeditions or they're going to be open world, I don't know yet, but there's a ton of stuff, and obviously it will tell you a bit about how the game's working, the lore and the history of the island, and that will get the immersiveness of the game up a huge amount, which will make you enjoy the game a ton more. But even for those people that are not really focused on lore or not really interested in it, there is practical benefits to this, such as unlocking certain content by going through, like the expeditions which you need to do for the main quest. You'll unlock access to them, go through them at least once to see how you need to do them, and then obviously you can craft the keys for them from that point as well. But also, as well as this, you'll get a ton of gold from doing the main quests, and obviously XP. You will also get a load of great gear, whether it be armor or weapons, through doing the main story quests, and you will unlock access at those level 60 zones to those elite legendary quests, which are going to get you some really good weapons and some extra special things that I won't spoil all of for you guys, but you're definitely going to want to make sure that you're following the main story quest all the way through. Now, in the beta, obviously, we were capped to level 45. When you got to the depths quest, you completed that one, and then the main story kind of fizzled out. But going into the main game, obviously, we'll have access to the full thing, and this is going to be really good. And throughout the entire story, a lot of you guys will probably experience the same thing as me. When you get to certain points, it says you can no longer continue the main story until you reach level 20, level 30, level 40, or whatever it is. And generally, that's a really good indicator that you are on track. And once you get to those points, by all means, go and power level through the town board, go and power level through faction quests, whatever you want to do. But I would definitely recommend sticking to the main story quest for that end game progression system, because when you get there, you will thank yourself for doing it. Not to mention that since the nerf to the town board, this is probably one of your best methods for getting XP, so definitely stick to doing those ones. Now, another really important point is going to be to not sleep on consumables, and this sounds fairly self-explanatory, but there's a reason for me saying this, and it's basically that food and potions are absolutely vital in New World, and they are going to allow you to complete a lot of content, whether it's PvE or PvP, that you probably wouldn't have been able to complete without that health potion, without the food, or without the stat boost foods as well, which is another really important thing. So making sure you level up your cooking and arcana skills are going to be really vital, and obviously that's to mean that you're going to be self-sufficient in terms of getting your own food, potions, and all of that good stuff. It also means that you can sell some of these if you want a good way to make money, and you manage to get up to tier 3 or 4 or even 5 foods fairly early doors in terms of the server status and life. Then you're going to be able to get a lot of these sold on the market, and tier 4 and 5 ones are going to sell even very later on into the game, once we're a few months down the line, even years down the line, these foods are still going to be the best and most sought after. So you being able to craft these is always going to be a steady, reliable moneymaker, as consumables are just that. They are consumed and then they're gone, so there's going to be needing to be a constant supply of these, particularly for people running that end game content and those PvP players as well. So it's going to be a really good moneymaker for the long term and short term. And finally as well, it also goes hand in hand with your camp, which is really, really good. The higher level or higher tier that you get your camp to, you can actually craft these foods and potions on the go, providing that you have the materials. So maybe if you're doing one of those elite zones, you're going through the area, you've grabbed quite a few ingredients, but you're running low on potions, you can put down your camp and you can craft those tier 3 or 4 potions, depending what tier your camp is, and that will actually allow you to restock on the go, which is going to be a very, very valuable skill. And if you're the guy that's got the levels in the crafting skills and the tier upgraded camp, which I've got a video for, which will be linked on screen for you guys now, if you haven't seen that, that'll teach you how to upgrade your camp to those higher tiers, and then you can be the one that everybody passes the resources to, craft up those potions, and you're going to be a vital player that a lot of people will want on their team. And not to mention, you're going to be very, very self-sufficient in any content that you do, so it's definitely worth having the ability to do that. Now, it's worth mentioning again, referring to those elite zones, that there is a lot of mobs that will drop potions, and the elite zones are going to be one of those things. So finally here, linking to my previous point about consumables, is actually going to be making use and taking advantage of the elite zones within New World. Now, these are really, really cool areas where it's recommended that you go in a party, and I would definitely recommend you go with at least 2 other players, but 3 or 4, meaning that you've got a party of 4 or 5 in total, is definitely the way to go with this in terms of efficiency, because you will have much more success at a much quicker rate of XP and all that good stuff when you're in these zones. And essentially, they're above ground expedition feeling areas with elite mobs in. They do a ton of damage, but they give a ton of weapon XP rewards, not to mention they give tons of drops in terms of gold, potions, food, gear, so armors and weapons, and all of that good stuff. And they're going to make you a ton of money off selling some of that, which isn't bind on pickup, as well as the raw gold that they do give. You might also obviously get upgrades to your gear by doing these zones, and most importantly, linking back to my previous point, you will get a lot of consumables, particularly higher tier potions if you're doing the right level that you're at. So if you're around level 40, you're doing the level 45 zones there, you're going to get some of those tier 3 and 4 potions, which can be expensive to craft in terms of material costs. So getting some of those, particularly in the early stages of the mid game, is going to be very, very essential, and is going to put you at a huge advantage for a lot of the content in New World, which is a really nice way to kind of just get ahead there and get ahead of the crowd with all of these quests that you can maybe now do, because you've got some of those better health pots and healing foods available to you, which is going to be really, really nice. So hopefully you guys have all found this video useful and informative. I've tried to combine a few tips that last throughout the game, as well as some that are going to be specifically for the early game, like the bag one that I mentioned there. If you guys have enjoyed, please do leave a like on the videos. It really does help me out. If you are new to the channel and you're enjoying New World content, you'd like to see more, then drop a subscribe down below. Make sure that you've got the notification bell turned on so that you don't miss out on any content. If you would like to join my community, or indeed join my company for New World, we've got a few spots left, so we're still recruiting there. Head over to the Discord. The link will be in the description and in the comments of this video. We'd love to have you over there. If you would like to become a channel member, that option is down below. You can click on the join button to see the options available there. And other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching. Take care, guys, and peace.